They call me a killer, a monster, a terrorist. Well, I am all of these things. What's up? Ghost Fictions is here and we're back again. This is a story where Issei became a villain and had the blacklight virus. In a distant reality, there lived a man neglected and unloved by most, except for a select few. His life was marred by constant harassment and filled with ruin and frustration. Determined to change his fate, he resolved to become a force of immense ruin and destruction. They would all come to fear him, a human who would bring about their ultimate downfall. Unbeknownst to them, this man possessed intelligence and power far beyond their understanding. He had created numerous projects, initially designed to protect his so-called friends and family, but now repurposed for their annihilation. The impending end would be catastrophic and lethal. Who will be the first to fall by his hand? But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations. Now, let's get into part 1. The Haidu clan was one of the most influential families in both the supernatural and the human world. They had several businesses and other associations that made it one of the most prized and respected families. Many of the family's members were either mages, warriors or influential businessmen. The family went by a very powerful motto. There is no good nor evil, there is only power and those too weak to seek it. This implied that the family was one of the most strict families, often being very selective and cutthroat on who will be their next candidate for leadership. Children born with low magical abilities are instantly repudiated, although they are not so barbaric as to abandon them. Miki Haidu Goru's wife had 3 children, the former leader of the Haidu clan, or more specifically Juzo Haidu, had at least 3 other children. One of the rules is that you are forbidden to attack another member of the family, even if they were repudiated. If someone breaks this rule, they will be expelled from said family without being allowed to return. The Haidu clan, or family, although respected by many families, is hated by a small bunch of them, which are the following: the Kushihashi family, the Daimon family, the Shinra family, the Himejima family, the Nakiri family. The reason for such hatred was because Juzo Haidu had humiliated the clan leaders and members. They never forgave that man, and the generational hatred persisted even to this day. Despite Juzo retiring his strength, the clan still were after him. Amongst the children and grandchildren that he clearly had a favorite. Since greed, envy and cruelty was present amongst his family except for one person, and that was Issei Haidu, whom he observed to have a big heart, and he considered Issei to be the new leader, much to his son Goru's chagrin. Speaking of Goru Haidu, he was tough with each of his children. He didn't allow them to be weak. After all, they had to put the Haidu surname at the top. Although he was disappointed that his son Issei Haidu did not have the magical reserves that his 2 older brothers had, so he put him aside until he finally ended up leaving him in the background. Feeling displaced by his own father, he tried to seek help from his mother, to which she did the same as his father, with all the pain Issei left without looking back. Little did they know, Issei possessed a far dangerous trait, his immense intelligence. He used it to start developing his first laboratory and started to design his first creation, the turbolight virus, which was designed to cure basic common cold and make the user immune to it. Years later, he returned to display his creation to his family, but instead he was ignored, thinking he was joking. He looked to his younger sister, who was named Rei Haidu. She has orange-brown hair, reddish-brown eyes and a slender figure with large breasts. She excels in Smjutsu, or better known as the art of the spear. She uses her magic to reinforce her attacks. She has a stubborn personality. Although she is rarely affectionate, she does not stop criticizing others, and she is not afraid to tell the truth without complaining to others. When she saw her brother's return, she began to spread rumors behind his back, where he was quickly pushed aside, although she was surprised that a month later they enrolled in Kuo Academy, or the high school section, which turned out to be her friend she made during her escape from the Haidu family. She was not the only one to enroll in Kuo Academy. Another person who also enrolled was none other than Dai Haidu, Rei and Issei's younger brother. He has dark brown hair, an average look, and brown eyes. The boy has a kind personality, and he also likes to help others. Beneath this personality lies someone extremely arrogant who believes himself to be better than others and is willing to sacrifice others to get what he wants. He carries the sacred gear. Cursed moon, where the soul of the evil dragon Krom Kruich resides, said sacred gear is below Longinus. He saw his older brother as a simple stepping stone, taking his turbolight virus and placing it as his, which made his family proud of Dai. Issei let it go at first, since he was able to make people happy, but he could see Dai smirking, which gave him a dark evil grin, which gave him a shiver, wondering what is going on with his little brother. However, he soon saw what kind of a person his brother really is and refused to help him soon, who in response turned any of the friends he had against him. He was being seen as a piece of shit by almost everyone present. When he started his second year, everyone looked at him as a piece of shit. That year was recruited by Ria's Gremory, along with her sister Rei Haidu, both being her two pawns who each occupied 4 pieces. Issei just stayed in the shadows, watching how it all ended. On one occasion Ria's Gremory came to Dai's room with a request that he take her virginity, to which he fulfilled said request, although this caused serious problems, mainly between the Gremory family with the Haidu house, where Ria's marriage with Riser Phoenix was cancelled. The next problem was Kakabiel's attack on Kuo Academy, with the intention of killing the 2 protectors of the city, which were none other than Sona and Rias. In order to start a new war, where they had the help of 2 exorcists who were sent by the church to recover the fragments of Excalibur that were stolen. Their names are Irina Shidu and Zenobia Quarta, although the first ended up wounded about to die if she was not treated as soon as possible. When Rias was about to be killed, she approached the current bearer of Albion, the White Dragon Emperor, one of the 2 celestial dragons, who easily defeated Kakabiel, where he took him along with the renegade exorcist Fried Selzen. Her name was Valerie. The next day they met her in person, although Dai could not help but undress her with his gaze. What bothered him most was that she called him a simple stone, that the only thing he would have to do was kick it out of the way. Days passed and finally the alliance between the 3 biblical factions could be carried out, which would be attacked by none other than Cateria Leviathan, descendant of the original Leviathan, who was killed by Azazel, leader of the fallen angels. After that fight the bearer of Albion betrayed the factions, since she was united to the Cows Brigade. Where she revealed that she is a descendant of Lucifer. He thought that their heirs of grandeur could be brought down, but they only got worse. In addition to some girls joining Dai's harem, it seems that he was only interested in having relationships with them. For a moment Issei discovered a little secret about his brother. He wouldn't do anything with him for the moment. After all, he had no desire for revenge. He just wanted a quiet life. At this rate he was never going to get it. Issei's anger grew with each passing day, although he tried not to create a ruckus. Then came the trip to Kyoto for the 2nd years of Kuo Academy, where the kidnapping of Yasaka, the leader of the Yaokais in Kyoto, took place. Without thinking, Issei threw himself into the fight alone, just so his brother would take the credit. At that moment he understood that it was useless to help others if they believed the lies of a bastard. In which he decided not to help anyone else, let them fend for themselves. His anger was the reason he started to develop the red light virus, which was initially designed to grant him immortality and super strength, but he later changed it to something much more sinister. It only grew more and more when the damned of the factions accepted the excuse that Dai Haidu only had bad luck in his encounter against Saraerd Bale. They seriously could not believe their stupidity. After that encounter came the middle class exams, where it was discovered that Valerie Lucifer's team was hiding in Dai Haidu's mansion. It seems that Officer Roberts was interested in Issei, although the damned tried to lie to the dragon goddess of infinity, which was his worst mistake, since Office in the past had tried to recruit Goru Haidu's oldest son. At that moment Dai Haidu proposed a way to prevent them from touching Valerie Lucifer. That way was for her to marry him, being the pillar of the factions. Many doubted, only to finally accept it as the best option. Over time Issei noticed how some girls came to visit, for example Tsubaki Shinryu Udokiba's girlfriend, Kusha Abaddon. From what he knew of her, she had a great interest in Saraerd Bale, Ria's Gremory's cousin, and finally Sona Citri. Issei Haidu didn't have to be a genius to know what they were doing in his room. He didn't care who his brother slept with. The only one who seemed not to accept his marriage was Valerie Lucifer, who only wanted to leave the Haidu residence with her team. Valerie Lucifer is a white-skinned girl. Her hair is almost silver white, her eyes are blue like 2 sapphires, and she also has a figure that many women could envy. She presents a cold, arrogant, confident and ruthless appearance, giving off that air of a bad girl. She firmly believes in her own strength, so much so that she refuses to use anything other than her Longinus divine dividing and her demonic powers. She is known for being a proud young woman and a battle maniac, having as a characteristic the obsession with finding strong rivals who are worthy of facing her. One day when they both stayed in that residence alone, it was the first time they exchanged words. Although she could seem extremely cold, it was not entirely true. It was only a mask to cover her true face, although he could notice that she had that desire for revenge. Over time they began to see each other secretly from the leaders, and mainly from Dai. At first it was only to talk. As the days passed they could show a sign of affection for each other. She was also one of the few that knew about the red light virus, and was horrified to know what it was capable of. She convinced Issei to make a vow to himself, to only use the virus when it is absolutely needed. There came a time when he was killed, not by his enemies. He was stabbed in the back by his brother Dai Haidu. He stabbed him with a dagger dipped in Samuel's poison. All this was seen by Officer Roberts, who shook her head at seeing the scum that was the bearer of Crom Cruch. Where she decided to help him, she went with Valerie Lucifer to the dimensional gap, where they were found by Great Red. With their help he gains another body, with the flesh and blood of Great Red, and with the power of Office. As a last aid, Great Red creates a dimensional breach to go directly to a specific part. The surprise was not long in coming for Valerie, since when he came out he was in front of who he least expected. It was her own mother. Rind White, RageRevan Lucifer's ex-wife. Rind is a beautiful woman whose appearance belies her age. She has light blue eyes and waist-length platinum blonde hair. She has a feminine and glamorous figure, but still gives off a gentle and tender impression. Although she suffered abuse from her husband, she was kind-hearted and talked with others properly and politely. She even would acknowledge her own faults and apologize accordingly. Valerie thought that her mother did not remember her. It seems that she was wrong. The memory erasure or modification magic was completely useless, since said magic does not work with people who have eidetic memory. She slapped her daughter for daring to decide for her, only to hug her instantly. She had her daughter back in her arms. Mother and daughter were finally reunited again. Mainly the rest was for Drake. After all, keeping his soul inside the balance breaker consumed a lot of his power, plus the underworld was attacked by the Jabberwocky, a monster created by Leonardo, a member of the hero faction, bearer of the annihilation maker. Many had perished during the demonic beast riot, and in the end Serzich's Lucifer had to intervene to make sure that the underworld is safe. Hades was severely charged in his involvement and had to stay in hiding to make sure that a repeat of this does not happen, much to his anger. Issei and Valerie had a meeting with Hades, who scowled seeing the two Longinus wielders present. He detested the two, as they eventually discovered that his wife was killed by the third previous wielder of the true Longinus. Issei offered to locate and maybe return his wife, which was met by scoff by the god of the underworld. He refused to believe that Issei is smart enough, no matter his IQ, since in his eyes, his wife's return was next to impossible, since her soul was apparently destroyed. Issei secretly researched for months, by when everyone presumed the disgraced to be dead and were celebrating his demise. His research eventually led him to find a trail that belonged to Hades' wife. Much to his shock, he started to take interest in the research and where it would lead to. Despite many dead ends, they eventually found something that would lead them to a world where Persephone could be found. An unknown dimension, where dead gods and supernatural beings reside. This wasn't like heaven or any of the afterlife present. Issei termed this place as the true real afterlife, not the mimicry that the pantheons had created. He entered the place, even when Rind and Valerie were against this. To his surprise and relief, he found Persephone. She was described to be a beautiful woman with long, wavy brown hair that cascades down her back, adorned with a delicate floral crown. Her outfit is a stunning mix of dark and red hues, intricately designed with elaborate details and gold accents. The upper part of her attire consists of a black lacy corset that accentuates her figure, paired with a short flared skirt that transitions into a longer, ruffled train at the back, creating a dramatic and flowing silhouette. She also wore thigh-high stockings with a distinctive crisscross pattern, adding a touch of allure and mystery to her look. Her arms are adorned with black gloves that extend just past her elbows. Issei found the goddess, who was surprised to see a dragon god present. However, Issei felt his very soul being ripped apart, as Hades warned him to head back before it is too late. He could sense his whole body being separated from his soul, which made him realize that this dimension was designed in such a manner that if a person does enter in this dimension, it was designed to keep that person in that place, no matter what happens. He convinced Persephone to head back with him, as he contained her soul in a special jar-like device that kept it intact. He then rushed back to Hades' realm and was barely alive, much to the happiness and relief of the others. Issei asked Hades on where her original body was kept, which the god was able to find a way to preserve it and keep it intact, much to his surprise. He asked for the body to be placed in a rebirthing chamber, another one of his inventions, as he placed the soul, and soon enough, the wife of Hades opened her eyes and was reunited with her lover. Although, Hades did receive a beating of his life due to what he had done. His screams echoing throughout his realm as Issei and his friends left him alone. Additionally, Issei along with Valerie received a surprise that would change their lives. It seems that Euclid Lucifuge was still alive, and getting his older sister, would do everything possible to have her for herself. Including creating clones of a person who had died a long time ago. RageRevan Livan Lucifer was not alive, he had died a long time ago in the previous war, plus RageRevan was not the son of the original RageRevan, but a simple clone. So who were they getting the DNA from to create these fake clones? A secret that existed in that family is that RageRevan had a twin sister, Hekara Livan Lucifer. Valerie had sought revenge against someone who was already dead, leaving her without a reason to continue fighting. The days passed where Issei noticed that Valerie seemed somewhat distant. She was thinking about everything that had happened. That fire of revenge had been extinguished. She no longer had any reason to continue fighting. Issei had developed even more bonds as time passed, some of which involved those from different pantheons like La Folia, Athena, Kuroka, Gondal, Tobio and Suzaku. They all managed to keep their bond a secret from the factions, and especially from Dai. This allowed them to maintain a close bond with each other. Issei also developed a strong bond with the rest of the Slashdog team, which resulted in them straying away from Grigori. At last the day of the final fight arrived. Their last opponent they had to face was none other than Trahexa, the Beast of the Apocalypse. All the leaders along with soldiers and the DXD group had planned to go against this chimera. While elsewhere, Issei Haidu went directly to a specific part. With a knowledge and seals he had recreated and improved the seal that the biblical god created. The information to create this seal was given to him by Gondel, who was Roswis's grandmother. After all, the seal that was designed by her granddaughter was not going to work, since the seal was designed to be used with Dai Haidu's magic. In that she realized that the seal was not for sealing, but for containment. Issei, with his immense IQ, was able to figure out and develop an even stronger seal, which allowed him to seal the beast permanently. At the end of the fight, Dai was completely upset. His brother, whom he thought was dead, had returned. It made his blood boil. He had decided that he was going to kill him personally in front of everyone. He took all the credit for the seal along with Roswis. The latter was congratulated by everyone, although she was not congratulated by her grandmother Gondel. Time passed, eventually, as they reached the hell disaster caused by Angra Mainyu, since Hades had retired from the Cows Brigade a long time ago. Issei met up with another person. While he was researching for another of his project, he was given permission to this library by none other than Athena. He ended up meeting none other than Artemis, or in her Roman name Diana. She was described to have round blue eyes and long white hair, with the bottom of her hair attaches to a large circular ornament. She wears a short revealing red dress, a silver necklace, and a pair of sandals. She wields a large bow which is capable of firing arrows made of pure energy as a weapon. Issei was worried but was surprised when Artemis knew about Issei being allied with her sister. She did warn him to not try anything funny with Athena, which Issei understood her as being protective of Athena, who was her older half-sister. He agreed to not try anything funny in any manner, and she left him be, wondering what she came for. However, she noticed Issei and Valerie make out, which angered her due to her natural hatred of men. The goddess, seeing all men as nothing but the same, this resulted in a confrontation between the two. At first it was an argument, but soon argument reached such a degree that the two attacked each other. They had to be stopped both by Issei and Athena from continuing to destroy Olympus. This alerted Zeus, who didn't like Issei at all. However, they were able to hide Issei, and the two did apologize and volunteer in fixing Olympus, as this got Zeus to leave them alone. Issei also secretly left to visit Ingvald, who was receiving help from Hypnos and Morpheus. The two gods became good friends of Issei, and were one of the few that saw Dai's true nature and avoided him. His research into the sleeping sickness allowed him to start finding out ways to cure the sleeping sickness. However, he was not alone when he informed this to his friends, with Artemis or Diana joining the group soon after the incident with Valerie. Upon Athena's advice, she decided to give Issei a chance, and the two became fast friends. The friends he had informed off were ready to help him, as he asked Athena, Morpheus and Hypnos for help, and they helped him through. Athena allowed entry into the library that let Issei research along with Morpheus and Hypnos, who guided him in their domain of magic. Issei's intelligence allowed him to cure a prototype version of the cure, which helped Ingvald a lot, but it still did not show signs of curing her in any manner. Issei decided to work even harder, however this didn't prepare him for a surprise that would give him joy in his life. Athena fell for the boy. Athena, who was described to be a lady with lilac hair and green eyes. She wears a white, sleeveless dress and had a bust larger than many women. Unlike Artemis, Athena is a very sweet and kind person. She has great strength, but she also has great sadness in her heart. The reason she fell. There came a time when Valerie entered Athena's sanctuary. You could see that she had a look of complete seriousness on her face, since in front of him were the goddess of the hunt Artemis and the goddess of wisdom Athena, where she faced the two, mainly of what they both felt after hearing how they began to fall in love with Issei. Valerie told them that she was not her only partner, where she showed the hologram of the least expected person. This left Athena and Diana speechless, although their surprise only lasted a few moments, where they agreed to be part of Issei's harem. Days later, they were visited by the faction leaders, as Zeus suggested Athena to get married to Dai to strengthen the alliance. Athena and Artemis along with some of the other gods opposed this, but Zeus was adamant. It didn't help that Dai was being perverted towards her and wanted to see her naked, which annoyed the goddess of wisdom, and others convincing her that being married to Dai was the best choice. Having enough of their attitude, Athena threatened to cut off all contact with the Greek pantheon. In response, Zeus threatened to strip her off her goddess status. However, Athena didn't care. She would keep her status as the virgin goddess no matter what happens. She also warned that she would be taking everything that belongs to her and never return, which angered Zeus, forcing him to give up his request of making her wed Dai. For now, that is. Issei was tempted to unleash the red light virus upon Zeus, but Athena convinced him to not do it, as Issei relented, but he did state that he would unleash the virus upon these so-called gods if they do strip her off her goddess status, which Athena agreed upon. She understood why Issei hated them and was also now starting to see why Issei hates the factions. She and many others decided to distract him by mentioning about a goddess that could help them in his research, and her name was Ermid, the goddess of medicinal plants, who was the daughter of Di Insect, the god of medicine. Issei continued the research until scene change. Time skip brought to you by Chibi Issei meeting Chibi Issei, concept, and talking about their lives. 1 month later. Underworld, 10:30 p.m. Issei was being chained, his body was riddled with swords and other weapons, his clothes were torn showing his skin which was riddled with wounds and injuries, blood trickling down from it. However, despite this, his spirit was far from broken. Now you must be wondering, how was Issei even caught and why was he in this situation? Well, you see. It was found out that Athena's love interest was Issei, and he was also the Red Dragon Emperor. This horrified and terrified many since Issei would want revenge. I only saw this and wanted the boosted gear for himself, being the spoiled brat he is, he wanted to take everything that belonged to Issei, just like he was doing so far. When it was brought to Athena, she refused to cut ties with Issei. As a result, I came up with a suggestion which was to capture Issei and strip of his gear. Then he was to be executed. This was agreed by all the faction leaders, seeing him as a nuisance and a disgrace. They captured and tortured him, but they never got the gear, much to their chagrin. When Issei saw their expressions, he only laughed at the people that caused this and responded, "Oh, you damned fools. Did you really think I would let Drake fall into your hands? I would rather kill myself than let him ever be used by people like you." The faction leaders and the others that detested Issei were angered by his actions. In his anger, Dai approached forward and shouted, "You damned bastard. What did you do?" Issei only laughed with madness as he responded, "He is far, far away from you fools. You will never find him nor make me tell his location, and soon, brother, your happiness will fall apart. I have found something very interesting of yours." The faction leaders and other people were confused. Well, Dai only had a bad feeling for this. Issei only spoke, "I know your back dealings, brother. How dare you? You will regret doing." Before Dai could complete, Issei gave a brutal headbutt to Dai, which pushed him backwards. He held his face in pain to see his nose was completely broken. He looked at Issei, who was grinning with madness in his eyes and expression. "Oh, little brother, I am not someone that is going to listen to whatever you have to say." Issei spoke with madness in his voice. He was not going to let a chance go by where he can put Dai in his place. Riaz rushed to Dai and asked Asia to heal her, as she spoke with anger and hatred, "You disgraceful wretch. How dare you hurt our Dai-kun?" Issei was unaffected by Grimmery's words, as he spoke with a mocking tone. "Does this face look like I give a fuck? I could care less if you fall for my brother or not. You are only saying this because we love Dai and not you." Riaz responded coldly as Issei only rolled his eyes, not caring for what this red-haired cow had to speak. "Let's see if you say the very same thing once you find his real face. Besides, I already have my own life and partners, why would I be jealous of you morons?" Issei's voice dripped with disdain and hatred, which none of the group cared for. Issei was thinking on how he had to get out of there, and he knew just the trick to do so. The people present started to insult Issei, who had gotten used to the insults. He could care less on what they think, as he was soon arrested and taken to a dark cell in the Cocytus, where he would be condemned for the rest of his life. I approached him and spoke with a sinister grin. "See, brother, this is what happens to those that oppose me. And making me look like a fool." Issei only looked at him and gave a predatory grin, and only spoke with enjoyment. "It's boom time." I realized this and spoke. "Get away. He is going to explode." Several managed to teleport out of there. Dai also tried to do so, but Issei managed to use his flames to break free and hold Dai, who struggled to get free. He could see the madness in Issei's eyes and felt fear from his brother. Issei was enveloped in said explosion, and the magic circle beneath his feet teleported him to a random area with his injuries. Issei appeared near a forest that was near a city. Due to his injuries, he fell completely to the ground, all bloody and with some burned skin. In the underworld it was another case. One of them is that Dai was still alive, although half of his face was completely burned. Asia along with Ravel approached to heal him, although it was of no use. Michael along with Azazel realized that Issei managed to replicate Drake's flames, although they were weaker than the original. Scene change. Unknown location, New York City, 9:50 p.m. Issei was holding his body in pain. He scrambled to a nearby base. He then spoke. "These wounds hurt." He soon reached a specific stone formation, which did surprise him at first, as he spoke with a sadistic grin. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. The reason Issei said that was because he had found one of his secret labs. He walked to the center and tapped on a pebble. It soon released a small module in the form of a ball which creeped towards him as it spoke in a robotic voice. Voice confirmation needed. Mercer. Issei spoke as the robotic voice responded. Voice identity confirmed. Welcome Master Issei Haidu. Issei went inside as he looked at the module retreating as soon, the ground erupted in front of him, which had two metallic doors. The doors opened in a sliding manner, almost akin to the glass doors in an airport or in a grocery store. He walked inside his laboratory, albeit it was sluggish as opposed to his regular self. Issei's laboratory is a high-tech futuristic laboratory with a sleek, sterile design, characterized by bright lighting and reflective surfaces. The lab features advanced equipment including robotic arms, glass-enclosed workstations, and numerous computer screens with holographic interfaces, indicating significant automation and digital integration. Reclining chairs suggest medical or biological research applications, supported by containers for biological samples and chemicals. Signage such as cybergenetics and timegate hints at the lab's focus on genetics and cybernetics. The open, transparent layout with ergonomic furniture enhances the modern, efficient atmosphere of the facility. The module that had retreated returned back to him as it announced. Master Issei. You are hurt, are you in any need of medical assistance? No, I am fine, Clara. Just some wounds. Pass me the vial of blacklight from the vault, would ya? The module's eyesight almost widened and closed its eyes using its eyelids, which were two metal sheets. Master, but the usage of the virus is prohibited, your chances of survival are going to be low. I will take the chances, Clara, bring in the vial. That's an order. Clara, the module looked at Issei and retreated back as it soon brought out two claw-like figures, which Issei calls it to be her hands. Yes, Clara is a female smart artificial intelligence, which manages and protects Issei's laboratories across several locations. She can transfer her consciousness to Issei's mobile device, or can move around in different modules that Issei had attached in his laboratories. Clara's abilities include, but are not limited to, overseeing planetary shipping operations, managing agricultural operations, serving as a planetary security intelligence, or controlling various functions aboard starships, such as weapons and point defense systems. She was created by scanning the neural patterns of human brains and are capable of learning and introspection. Clara is one of the few smart AI that is able to separate themselves into multiple runtimes or fragments. This can be beneficial when the AI needs to perform multiple tasks or be in multiple places simultaneously. The sheer volume of information and calculations Clara can process is astounding. Clara gave the vial to Issei, which was a reddish liquid vial which had several green spores. He looked at the vial, remembering that he would never use the vial unless he was desperate. However, with what the factions planned on doing, he had to consume the virus. He soon asked for a syringe, as he put the contents of the blacklight virus and injected into his bloodstream. No sooner did he inject the virus into his bloodstream, contents of the virus injected inside his body rewriting his DNA and blood cells. The same blood that once belonged to Great Red is now being over by this simple virus. The whole process was painful, as Clara watched Issei scream in pain due to the transformation. Clara wanted to help but a hand from Issei stopped her. The scientist knew it would be painful when he would inject himself with the virus, almost to the point of giving up. He wanted to give up and close his eyes and rest due to the immense pain it was causing him. However, he remembered the pain his past had caused him. He hated what his so-called family and friends had done to him, which increased his anger even further. He then shouted with all his anger. You will not beat me. I won't give up. I will destroy you all for looking down on me. This I promise to all you pathetic leaders. Issei shouted with anger and hatred in his voice. He knew that the blacklight virus will take over his body, and he will become a shell of his former self, controlled by the virus, but he was not going to let that happen. He was the host of the Welsh Dragon, and he would be damned if his own creation overpowered and controlled him. He decided to charter his own legacy, a legacy of respect, fear and dread. And he was not going to fall to this damned virus. The pain suddenly stopped as the module started to move towards him. He looked at his hands, seeing that the virus has integrated into his body. The module soon asked. Are you alright? I am better than ever. Clara Issei looked at his hands and spoke. It seems like despite the virus's best efforts of integrated itself into my bloodstream and take over my body, it was unable to beat my willpower, and I was able to modulate the virus's makeover into my own system. I don't think I can even call myself a dragon anymore. I am something entirely new. Clara moved forward and unleashed a scan on Issei's body. She then spoke. I am detecting the virus comprising of several blood cells in your bloodstream. Right now the virus DNA and your dragon god DNA have merged into a single entity. I believe that the virus was unable to take over your body, instead chose to merge with your blood cells, letting it have a better chance of survival. I see. That is why I can keep my original self intact. This virus is in its prototype stage, and yet I injected myself with this virus, and something really interesting happened. I evolved myself beyond the limitations of my own body. Issei grinned as he soon started to laugh with maniacally. He managed to surpass even the body limitations that may be present in the body of the Great Red. He. Ha 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 ha. Issei laughed as some characteristics of his body were starting to change due to the virus's injection in his own body. His eyes changed to sickly gray in color, and his skin changed into pale gray as he started to transform his hand into a black gooey-like substance, implying the virus has integrated into his body. He reverted his hand back to normal as he decided to get a change of clothes. He was now wearing plain blue jeans and black shoes, a button-up white shirt with a protruding collar kept partially buttoned, a plain gray hoodie, and a black leather jacket with a red interior, 2 horizontal white lines on each sleeve, and a loopy red winged insignia on the back. This suits me well, doesn't it? After all, Issei Haidu is dead. I am Issei Mercer. Issei spoke, shedding his past and preferring to go by the name of one of the most ruthless and deadliest scientists known to both the supernatural and human world, Alexander J. Mercer. So should I call you Master Mercer? Clara asked, to which Issei responded. Yes, Clara, I would rather not be associated with that disgraceful name ever again. After all, they did disown me once I had hid the sacred gear and was apparently plotting against the factions. Issei started to head outside the laboratory as he gave a glance to Clara. Remind me to create an android body for you, Clara, so you can travel with me. Issei spoke with a genuine smile towards his AI assistant, who nodded. The doors soon opened outside of the New York City. He soon started to head towards the city and spoke. The night is young, and I have some people to make them pay for what they did to me. Issei spoke lifelessly as he looked at the full moon. He soon leaped from building to building and reached the top of the building as he soon spoke. It's going to be fun, going after those people. It is going to be bloody from now on. Issei's eyes started to glow bright red. He was ready to shed some blood, especially of those that belonged to his past. A few days later. Serafol Memorial Hospital, 9:30 a.m. A few days have passed since Issei's death. At the current moment Dai Haidu was waking up. A few days have passed, but the strangest thing is that he felt an enormous pain in his face. He slowly brings his hands to his face, where he could notice that he had several bandages on one part of his face. Suddenly the memories of that explosion came to him. The bastard Issei did all this to him. He had planned to take him with him, although his gaze quickly filled with fear. If Issei knew everything he did and also has evidence, he must have that evidence hidden. I need to locate that evidence before he gets it. Dai thought as he spoke to himself. I swear that as soon as I left the hospital I would search under every rock for all the evidence that incriminates me. Now the doubt that gnaws at him is where the boosted gear was. Someone else must have had it. Then he slowly remembered that Issei was grinning with lifeless eyes. Dai clenched his fists in rage, to the point of bleeding, as he spoke with anger. That bastard, he intended to die. Tears of helplessness and anger were flowing from his eyes, knowing that it was nothing short of a hollow victory. At that moment he felt an enormous pain in his chest. He felt like vomiting. He couldn't stand it anymore and vomited on his own feet. He felt like something was burning inside him. What he felt was burning was his soul. Scene change. In the waiting room, Azazel was dialing Valerie's number, but it always ends up in voicemail. He grits his teeth in anger, since this was the 10th time she refused to contact him. Ever since Issei died, Valerie has cut all contact with the leaders, and so has all those that were Issei's friends, except for a small bunch who had to be present to not make the leaders suspect them. That bastard. How the hell did he get the grenade? Azazel muttered with anger as Serziches soon came inside. He also was not happy with what Issei had done. Report stated that many soldiers of the factions were killed in the explosion, burned alive by the flames. He felt that that explosion was not a normal one. He felt that there was something he was overlooking. Another problem they have in mind is what he discovered a few days ago before Issei's trial. What is it that worries you? Serziches asked, to which Azazel spoke with an annoyed tone. That bastard played us for fools. He managed to trick and deceive us with relative ease. He had someone hidden away from us. Azazel's words were responded by a confused expression from the Crimson Satan, who asked. What do you mean? Azazel took a deep breath to calm himself as he spoke. That bastard hid the wielder of the Nereid Curie from us. Serziches became surprised by this as Azazel continued, which would stun him even more. Worse, she is a descendant of the Leviathan family. Serziches became pale as his gaze turned to that of terror. He realized on how Issei was able to successfully deceive them. Neither could they get the boosted gear, nor could they keep Issei alive, who clearly knew about where the descendant of Leviathan was. Opening start. Issei looked down, wearing his hoodie. His eyes witnessed the endless hell as he jumped into it. A series of images showing the blacklight virus as he holds his head in pain. Before he gets up and walks forward. Appearances of his friends and family are shown. Valerie is looking down in sadness as she turns around and scowls to see Azazel. He forwards his hand as Valerie turns it away. Azazel gets angry, but Issei soon appears and grins as Azazel backs away with fear. Valerie turns around and smiled as she embraces him. She is joined by Athena, Artemis and a silver-haired woman as he glares at Azazel. He backs away as he clenches his fists. Issei calms down his girls before he commands Azazel to leave, who does so out of fear. The scene changes to Issei, in disguise, as he watches over the factions like a predator. He smirks seeing Serziches and the other leaders dealing with several figures. He soon leaps in as he starts charging at the leaders and confronts them. Issei was now in his laboratory as Clara hovers beside him. He is joined by Team Slashdog and his adoptive parents as he researches a cure. He glances towards a purple-haired girl as he vows to help her recover. Hypnos and Morpheus both assist him as Aramid and Dionysiete help him find a cure. The scene changes to Artemis and Athena, who are surrounded by the Greek gods. Athena throws her emblem as she and Artemis leave Olympus along with their followers. Zeus can be seen clenching his fists in anger as he vows to defeat Issei. Issei is watching his anger with a smile on his face as he is enjoying seeing the despair. Issei is seen beside his friends as they all smile at each other before Issei looks in the camera. His eyes start to glow in red as he looks down on several figures belonging to the Haidu clan. They all have looks of anger as the group leaps upon them, clashing against them to wipe them out for good. The final scene shows Issei looking at his lab as he walks away from it. The lights of the lab goes off as Issei exits from the lab with a smile on his face. Opening start. New York City, 10:30 p.m. It's been at least 5 days since that assassination attempt by Issei Haidu. Some, like Dai's partners, thought that the bastard had died, although Issei knew the smartest ones were not going to be relieved until they saw his body. During this time that Issei has been passing under the radar of the factions, or rather by not paying attention, they have not realized that he has moved between the factions. After all, it was difficult to detect him. The only problem was changing his essence, since with this, it would be easy for dragons, yokai and even vampires to find him. However, that was covered when the blacklight virus merged with his current DNA, making him undetectable like a shadow. Issei was walking around the city of New York. He had some cash in his hands as he saw a nearby pizza parlor. He entered inside and sat down as the waitress approached him and took the order. Soon enough, she came in with a huge pizza which comprised of several chicken pieces as she spoke with a gentle tone. "Your order, sir." "Thank you, miss. Where is my Diet Coke?" The lady remembered as she headed towards a nearby fridge and got a bottle of Diet Coke to him as she spoke with an apologetic tone. "Sorry sir, there is an issue with the machine. Is it alright if I give the bottle?" Issei nodded and accepted it. He looked at the bottle of his Diet Coke and started to drink a bit. He also started to eat his pizza completely, leaving nothing left. This took a few minutes since he had to complete the entire pizza and gulp down the entire bottle. He successfully did so and paid the bill, which was $25.60, which he paid due to the funds in his account. He knew that if the factions were really smart, they would track his credit card down, but with Dai around, it will take them ages to do so. He knew that many would presume him dead, like the garbage he is supposed to be. Issei soon left the restaurant and decided to walk around the place. He needed to find a way to get back at not only the supernatural, but also those from his former clan and former academy. He quickly remembered a small event, mainly related to a girl of said race. This girl was none other than Valerie Teeps, the current sub-leader of the vampires. She had an idea in mind where the girl was going to be a fundamental part of her plan, one that was going to bring several surprises. Although the girl is a childhood friend of that transvestite, who was quickly badly influenced by his younger brother, it seriously gave him more of a headache than a demon to say the word God for 6 hours without stopping. During his walk, he began to remember people who would be useful to him in his plans for revenge, not only against the factions, but against all those who mocked him behind his back. He remembered those girls that he felt a great interest in, only for his hand to change into a blade which quickly cut down a tree that was next to him. Only the sound of the tree falling against the cold ground could be heard. Love ends when betrayal begins. Issei spoke coldly, remembering more of his past. He vowed to cripple every pantheon in the supernatural. All those colorful memories were turning into simple images in white, gray and black. With all the calm in the world, he continued on his way. He had to think about how to meet Valerie. After all, he knew that some leaders would not be so stupid to think that he would be dead after that explosion. Where should I start? Issei spoke with a thought as he remembered Drake and remembered on what he had to do to get him safely. After all, the best place to hide is where you can least expect it to be. I really need you, best buddy. Issei headed to a nearby internet cafe in Times Square, where he used a small mind trick to deal with the handler of the shop and settled down in a nearby computer. He created a fake account on the social media and decided to locate Valerie Teeps, who was on social media. He noticed several things as he thought. Let's see, there's nothing strange in his profile, he has a quiet life. Issei thought with a smile. Let's see if he can stand this. After all, how will he know about madness? It's the same as gravity, it just needs a little push. Issei began to laugh at the future misfortune that was going to happen. A small part of him broke away, the size of a molecule, allowing him to transmit himself through technology and wiring. Slowly he began to map everything out, sending a message that would change the girl's life. Thanks to your knowledge and experience, I can make use of your abilities, Issei smiled to himself. Before turning everything off, he got curious to check other people's profiles. He never gave it any importance because his life was a complete mess, and he was quickly harassed by those people. There was nothing strange, checking profile by profile they hadn't updated in the last few days. It seems that the attempted murder of their beloved pillar left them in complete shock. He remembered something about dragon mates. An explanation Drake gave him a few months ago came to his mind. At first he didn't pay attention to it, he cursed himself for not being able to ask him more at that moment. The dragon's mark on its females comes with several benefits, one of which is that it makes them immune to another dragon's pheromones. Dragons don't mess with any woman in a relationship. Since in the eyes of dragons that is seen with bad eyes. Well, it seems that Dai Haidu cared little, thinking a little his brother must have been looking for all the evidence he had against his brother. The good thing is that he didn't take it with him that day, or he could have burned the only evidence that could prove his innocence and sink others. I must admit that I am lucky with Valerie. Issei thought with some affection. He was grateful that he met up with Valerie and became one with her. He was starting to get worried on how his death may have affected them. He soon remembered another incident that caused his cheeks to heat up. It was once that he drank golden apple distillate together with Valerie, Rind, La Folia and Gondel. At first he was bewildered by what happened when he just woke up, his head hurt as if a demon had prayed for a whole damn night. During that time he noticed that the mark of the Securuite appeared on their bodies. It was no secret that a person was watching Rind. Love at first sight, too bad he wasn't going to be able to try something with her. Well, I have to go, after all thinking too much about the past can play against me a lot. Issei said, while closing the tab. Before he could do so he saw an image that made him frown. Who would have thought I would find an image of you? He asked himself with a sarcastic tone. She remembered that girl perfectly well. She was her former partner, before starting a relationship with Valerie. That same girl had proposed to her to have a free relationship, so she could sleep with other men. She thought that everything would turn out well. At that moment several things began to become clear very easily. The first is that in the last few months she spent her time in different courses. When he tried to spend time with her, she told him that she was completely busy. The second reason is that she always seemed to be a good person with people. With her alone it seemed to be the worst of the punishments. And the three easiest of all was her smell and essence. She had not been the same for a few days. It seems that she had been cheating on him for a long time. Well, your life is in a complete mess now. Issei spoke with a mocking tone as he closed the tabs and turned off everything. He soon walked out and snapped his fingers, returning everything back to normal. He remembered the incident which caused her to be treated as a pariah. He decided not to kill her. After all, what better way to get revenge than for her to wish not to live? Everything fell apart for him. With that idiot who was that girl's lover, he ran away with his tail between his legs, although he enjoyed it very much when she and her friends ate kakuni. What was so special about that dish? Let's just say that she had a perfect pig for the dish. What he enjoyed the most were her screams of pain. The girl was completely devastated. Together with her friends, they left Japan to go abroad to start a new life. After all, her life in Japan was completely destroyed. Not even her parents wanted to see her. Well, at least learning to cook was of some use. That's what happens to those that deceive me. Issei spoke coldly. He had no empathy for the woman, which only became to complete apathy when the virus took over his DNA, magnifying his negative emotions. Scene change. Time skip brought to you by Chibi. Issei locating for a way to create infinite Diet Coke for himself, while Chibi Clara sighs in response. Several days later. Underworld, 9:30 AM. The factions were at the site where the explosion had happened. Several days had passed since Issei's death, and they were looking for clues on a way to locate where he is. Many were happy that the disgrace to the Haidu family was dead and gone for good. However, some of the more smarter ones believed he is still out there. Some of these smart ones were not convinced on his death. They knew that without a confirmation of his body. These were Azazel, Ajuka, Omenhel, to name a few. Don't understand why this eagerness to find that bastard. I don't think it would be possible for him to survive being the center of the explosion, Riaz exclaimed with frustration and annoyance. She hated that they are looking for someone that she hated with all her heart, as Ajuka responded. We need to locate him, Riaz, his body. If he does survive, he will want revenge against us. Ajuka explained to her, earning a huff from the princess. Azazel then spoke. But even then, what could that bastard want now? He is really clever hiding himself in the darkness. Azazel exclaimed with annoyance. He also believed that Issei is out there, but he did not understand his current intentions. He wanted to know what plans Issei has for them. Not to mention, my own daughters and some of the gods have cut all ties with me. Zeus spoke with anger, remembering Athena and Artemis, along with Hades cutting all ties with them. He hated that his own daughters chose that bastard over him. He wanted to find Issei or his soul and torment him for all eternity. Don't remind me, even Valerie has cut all contact with me. Azazel spoke while checking the rubble. He then looked at his phone, and the amount of missed calls and texts that were present really angered him. His own daughter refused to maintain contact with him. However, that was not the only reason he was angry. It turns out that another woman that he was making moves on refused to see him ever again. He remembered her furious and livid expression when she saw him, making him wonder what he did to her, unaware that him killing Issei was responsible for this. Besides, Office left along with her copy. Serzicha spoke with nervousness, which earned an angered expression from Azazel, who grits his teeth in annoyance, remembering the fact that he lost his position because of her. Seriously, this is just mere rubble, maybe we should check at a different location. Elmenhold suggested, the rest to which they agreed. Much of the DXD group tried to search for some clue or the body of Issei Haidu, even reaching his room, but in the end they only found shopping notes. All of these were quite burned or in some cases impossible to read. In an almost lonely place where they had previously checked was a person. She can be described as a young woman with short blonde hair and red eyes. This young woman is none other than Valerie Teeps. She seemed to be holding her head from time to time, like right now. They feel your sacred gear. Only reason they are bearing you is because you are part of the Teeps family, even if you are a half-blood. Valerie held her head in pain and shouted. Shut up. This is not true. The figure in the darkness only shook his head and spoke annoyed. TCH. I wanted you to see the world for the cesspool it is. But I guess you need to learn it the harder way. This made Valerie afraid as she backed away, but before she could do anything, the figure grabbed her head and she started to feel dizzy. In the past, due to the excessive use of her long-eyeness, it was shown that Valerie is broken both in the heart and soul. Despite that, she was still able to show some emotion such as happiness. Now, with that being in her mind, he began to play with her mind. Several images suddenly came to her, each one of them was getting more intense. She was shown the crimes that different people committed until she reached Issei Haidu. She slowly opened them without believing what she saw. In the end, he saw a memory that ended up breaking her. The figure was revealed to be none other than Issei, who had an annoyed and irritated expression on his face. He looked at the unconscious Valerie and spoke. What a nuisance. I wanted her to see the world for what it is. But Issei's hand started to change into a small device, which looked awfully familiar to a similar device meant for extracting sacred gears. I have other ways of making you see the world in my eyes. Issei smirked, knowing that the next time she wakes up, she will be a broken woman, since this would change everything. After a few minutes, Valerie woke up, which prompted Issei to give a sadistic glee, the device ready in his hand. You shouldn't worry about those bastards, after all they can feed you with their food, won't they? Issei spoke with a sadistic glee, as he watched Valerie's lips suddenly start to be licked by her tongue. This was due to a memory of food being played in her mind. She remembers several occasions her favorite drink, which was the strawberry water that Issei prepared. She drank it without anyone noticing. For some reason, she became extremely addicted to it. At least someone from this brainless batch of factions is using their brains. Shame it is too late for that. Valerie sat down in a kneeling position and started to release her tongue, almost behaving like a dog as she spoke. I want more of that drink, Valerie demanded, to which Issei wagged his finger and spoke sarcastically. I am afraid I cannot do that. You treated me so kindly, remember. Valerie lost her current expression as her mind changed into that of desperation, which was shown in her new expression as she spoke with tears in her eyes. Please give me that drink. I will do anything. Issei's expression changed into that of amusement as he spoke with an amused tone. Anything. Valerie nodded furiously, her mind was completely clouded and foggy. She had started to become addicted to that drink. Issei's grin widened in happiness as he spoke. I need 2 things from you. No negotiations, and you will get the drink. Valerie again nodded, unaware that she started to trigger the disaster that is going to soon befall the factions. A few hours later. Hours have passed with nothing to be found. They all decided to return home and take a break. Gasper noticed Valerie and approached her, who didn't seem interested in any way in talking to him. Not now, Gasper, I am not a child anymore. I cannot play those games with you. Valerie spoke with annoyance, with her thinking. So I don't want to do that you want. Gasper spoke nervously, in response. Edov Valerie, I want to know, if why you. Valerie only responded by raising her hand in front of him and spoke with a sigh. Gasper, I don't see you as a lover, but as a little brother. Those words destroyed the Grimoire bishop, who could only look at Valerie, who had turned around. I am sorry, Gasper. In her hands, she was holding the mobile phone of Issei Haidu. She heard sluggish walks from Gasper as she opened the device and sent the message to Issei. In the meanwhile, Issei, who was seated on the rooftop, got the message and smirked. He then spoke. Playing with memories is complicated, but you will make quite the useful pawn, Valerie Teeps. Issei used his super speed to jump from building to building, where nobody could even detect him, only noticing a gust of wind due to his speed. He remembered the two conditions from Valerie. First, he altered her memories, which can be done with the virus's shape-shifting abilities, allowing him to connect to the user's brain and alter their memories. The connection is done via the hand's nerve cells, with the nerve cells present in the brain. He then asked her to do what she was supposed to do, and she did accordingly, without anyone suspecting her in any manner. The second thing he asked was her sacred gear. He assured her that the process was neither painful nor lethal to the enemy. He was able to extract the Sephiroth Graal, which would help him in his goals of speeding up the faction's destruction. Now there is only one place I can be. It is time for a reunion. Issei rushed towards the apartment where someone would be waiting for him. He knew that there would be more allies that are going to help him in the war against the factions. Scene change. Rind Lucifer's residence, Kuo, 11:30 a.m. At the current moment, Rind was drinking some coffee. She had heard a story a couple of days ago that made her think about some things, besides being upset about having to talk to a person who gave her horrible headaches. Valerie had come from behind and spoke. Hey mom, you seem to be lost in your thoughts. Rind could only groan in frustration as she spoke. I can't believe that idiot had the balls to flirt with me again. Bitterness was present in the tone. She really hated Azazel. When Issei's death was announced, his friends also believed that Issei was too stubborn to die from an attack like that. He had several contingencies to prevent this from happening. Although many were locating him, they had to remain hidden from the factions to make sure that they don't locate Issei by accident, which devastated several who were worried sick for him. I wished to teach him a lesson that he would never forget. Rind spoke with hatred as Valerie blinked for a few times and responded. I understand this, mother. That idiot wanted me to be engaged to that one of man. Valerie spoke with disgust, remembering the fateful day when the proposal was made. It made her want to vomit in response. Rind looks up in the ceiling and speaks with an amused tone. I am surprised that they didn't notice us, despite being in the same city. It is all thanks to Kuroka. She may be lazy, but she knows how to hide herself in many of us. Valerie spoke with a smirk, as soon another voice spoke. Although I am surprised on who Issei gave the boosted gear to. Valerie and Rind recognized the voice to be of Albion, as Valerie spoke again. Issei knew that these morons would look for anywhere aside from the very obvious places. Valerie spoke with a smile, before it changed to that of a disgust. He would never let the gear fall under the hands of the factions, especially that bastard. Albion spoke with disgust in response from the gear. I understand what Valerie did. What we might really be worried about is that idiot died finding her, like a little boy going with the leaders. That bastard just wants to have more and more power. It is like an endless and bottomless pit that craves nothing but power, and it is not going to end well for him. Valerie spoke with a sigh and annoyed tone. Rind soon looked up the stairs of her mansion, as she spoke worriedly. I am worried for her, Vali. She has not come down from her stairs as of yet. Rind spoke looking towards that direction as Valerie responded. Well, she has been worried for him. Valerie's voice also held worry. She could only hope that Issei was able to escape the leaders and return back home. Speaking of the woman upstairs, in one of the rooms you can see a single bed along with some furniture. Sitting on the edge of the bed was a woman with silver hair and red eyes, white skin. She began to reflect on her past, realizing that her personality was to be immensely malicious, cruel and brutal, also very proud of her achievements. Always acting like this made her superior to everyone, and being a true demon in her eyes. What she never expected was that during her escape she was imprisoned by Euclid Lucifuge, only for the purpose of serving as a blood donor, since the demon was obsessed with his own older sister. Something that bothered her was that he created clones of her, but these were not clones of women, but of men, since Euclid felt that she was an inferior being and told her to her face that if she were a man none of this would have happened. The only reason she was alive was to continue being a donor, to continue creating more clones. Her name is RageRevan Lucifer, or when she goes by her nickname RageRevan Lucifer, former heiress of the Lucifer clan, as well as being a distant cousin of Grafia Lucifuge. After all, she was also part of the Lucifuge clan. Everyone would think that she was the daughter of Lilith, the mother of all demons. In reality, Lilith was only her stepmother. Brian thought of a few things. She was surprised when Issei intended to keep Lilith at a different location, along with Ingvald and another person. He would do so with the help of Ermid, who was ready to help them. After all, her stepmother was in the brink of maternal death thanks to constantly birthing devils for Lucifer. Trapped in a state of comatose and her body rotting and decomposing. Bri spoke with mockery. The question is, how long will it take them to regain all their powers? She knew that at some point they would have to come to light and reveal that they never died. At least the idiot Serziches thought I was the sister of the idiot RageRevan. At least he can't blame me for crimes that the Chaos Brigader Klepeth committed against me. She said with total mockery. She laughed to herself, perhaps I'm like Zekrom Baal, the first leader of House Baal, and said to have greater influence than the current 4 great Satans. Well, the clones have faced were just 70% of my original power. Rise spoke mockingly, as her gaze soon became slightly cold and spoke. Although I am surprised that the piece of junk of a clone had a family. You haven't changed at all, Rise, always staying at the top. Rise turned towards the direction of the voice, to see a boy with pale skin and grey eyes. She then spoke. Who the hell are you? The boy didn't respond, which caused Rise to get angry and scream. Answer. Wow, I became paler and you forgot to recognize me. Plus, is it just me or has your breasts grown a bit bigger? Rise became embarrassed and was ready to kill him, but then she realized only there was one person that had a fetish for breasts, as she spoke her name with a low tone. Issei. Issei removed his hood. He had the same hairstyle, except his face and eyes were different. He then spoke. It's been a while, Rise. It can't be you. Issei was different. Rise spoke with disbelief, to which Issei spoke while walking towards Rise, which made her almost fall. Issei then caught the super devil in his arms and spoke. Who else can I be? After all, I know of your secret. Issei spoke with a soft tone, causing Rise to turn beet-red, blushing like a tomato. She turned her gaze away while speaking. Baka. Issei kissed her on the cheek, which made her even more embarrassed, as he placed her gently down. She was nevertheless happy for Issei's return, as she spoke. Where have you been? And what happened to you? Why are you well pale and your eyes grey? Issei took a deep breath and spoke. I will explain. How about you call both Rind and Valerie upstairs? I will explain everything. Rise nodded, as she did what she asked. Issei could only watch her leave. He knew that he was going to spend some time with his 3 girls before he returned back to one of his laboratories where Ingvald and Ermid were, along with Lilith. He was researching a way to help the 2 girls, that being Ingvald and Lilith. Scene change. After a happy and cheerful reunion between Issei, with Rind and Valerie, they all decided to ask the question on how he was able to escape and live on. It was not easy. I had to create an explosion that would injure a lot of people. It was easy since I can recreate Drake's flames without his helper involvement, albeit it was much weaker. However, it was not easy to survive. I was badly injured. Issei explained, as Valerie held his hand in worry. He gave her an assuring smile, and Rind asked. So how did you survive? With this. Issei showed his free hand, which shapeshifted into a black whip-like figure. This made the 3 afraid as Valerie backed away, wondering whether it was Issei or the blacklight virus, taking the guise of Issei. That means. Are you really Issei? Or an impostor? Valerie exclaimed with worry and fear, as Issei spoke. I am Issei. The virus did try to take over me and replace me, reconstituting me into a version of myself. But I did not let it happen. I refused to let it take over my body, not without a fight. Eventually, the virus saw its next best option to survive in my body, which was to merge with my DNA, evolving my current dragon god DNA into something completely different. Valerie looked at Issei, his hand reverting to normal. Rise then asked. That means, you really are Issei. Not the virus taking his appearance. Issei shook his head and spoke. No, I did not let it. I will show you some of my DNA to prove it. Issei generated a blade and triggered a small cut, which made the girls even more worried. The wound immediately healed once Issei took the blood in a vial. He then summoned a microscope within his dimension and placed the blood in a slide and showed it to them, using a magic viewer that showed a detailed view of his blood. As you can see, my blood is still mine. The virus cells would be freely moving if the blacklight virus replaced me, except it is in a manner that my blood cells and the blacklight virus cells are merged into one entity. They all looked at the blood cell. It looked like a regular one, except it had traces of black color inside of it, along with 2 pincer-like appendages appearing from them. Otherwise, this was what my blood structure would look like. Issei added with a serious tone, showing the image of what happens when the virus would enter into the blood. Brian gasped in horror, keeping her hand on her mouth in horror. Well, Rise and Valerie shivered knowing what would have happened if the blacklight blood entered into their bloodstream. They remembered that the virus is known to replace and reconstitute itself into themselves, having their memories and personality. They paled on what would have happened had the virus entered into their bloodstream, and they hated themselves being replaced by a virus version of themselves. Issei surviving this is considered a miracle. I see. So you really are Issei. Valerie spoke with a blushing smile before she turns her gaze away and speaks. Issei, I am. I don't blame you for not trusting me and seeing me as a virus pretending to be me. This was an outcome I saw coming, and don't beat yourself for this, Valerie. Valerie looked at him and nodded as Rise backed into a wall and leaned on a nearby wall. She then spoke. Well, it is good to have the real you back, Ice. But we are facing problems, aside from people looking for you. Issei snapped his fingers and dispelled everything. He then asked. What's the matter, Rise? And you needn't worry about them, I can keep myself hidden very well. Rise gave a glance towards Rind, who spoke with annoyance. You see, Azazel has been calling Valerie and flirting with me. Rind was expecting Issei to get angry, only for him to have a psychopathic smile, and he had spoken. Maybe I should talk to him about not touching others' women. Issei spoke with spite, venom dripping from his tone. He would certainly enjoy having a talk with Azazel. He put that in his to-do list when he does have an eventual encounter with him. Yeah, that moron thinks he has a chance with Rind. Besides, you should keep a low profile. Rind suggested, Issei, to which he spoke. No worries, I got that covered. They would be busy with Dai Haidu's wedding in a manner that they would want to rush it up. But with his current wounds, Dai would want to postpone the wedding. Plus, America is the perfect place to hide, since the supernatural activity is the lowest, and I can rest in my labs if needed. They wouldn't even come to know that I am there. Rind nodded, knowing some of the labs and where it is hidden, the supernatural won't even know where they are. I will be visiting Ingvild. I need to check up on her status of her waking up. Issei got up as Valerie spoke. She has been showing signs of waking up, although you may need to work on a newer cure if you really want to get rid of the sleeping sickness. I am aware, and besides, they would never find Ingvild and Lilith, no matter how much they try. Issei spoke with an assuring tone, as the girls nodded. He assured them that he would return soon to spend the day with them. He only wants to check up on Ingvild and Lilith, and then he would return. Scene change. Bremery Castle, Underworld, 10:30 p.m. The leaders of different factions were gathered together. Apparently they were discussing how the demons did not do their job perfectly. After all, they only had one job to do, and they failed to do anything. That was a low blow to them, since Issei Haidu made them look like incompetent. Shemhazai, the new leader of the fallen angels, spoke. Upon examining the explosion crater, no trace of any object was found that would lead us to its possible hiding location. He spoke with great annoyance, and with bags under his eyes. Azazel just looked at the leaders with a frustrated look. There was no trace of him, except for some notes in his diary and his cell phone which the police managed to recover. Azazel spoke firmly. They remembered that the cell phone was with them, but it was soon stolen by an unknown person. That person was revealed to be Valerie Teeps, who had done Issei's job of retrieving his cell phone and later returning it back to him. From what Serzich has told me, there was a new Longinus wielder that was located by him, whose whereabouts are unknown. Auden spoke with a deep thought, as Azazel then spoke with a frustrated tone in response. Yep. That bastard hid her location from us. Nyx was the one controlling her, and somehow she had met Issei before we could do so. Her name is Ingvild Leviathan. Azazel spoke with a frustrated tone. He really despised Issei to the point of ripping him apart completely. Zeus also shared similar thoughts, since he really hated Issei for turning Athena and Artemis against him, along with several gods from his pantheon. And what is her sacred gear? Olmenhild asked, keeping her hand on her head due to the pain. Her sacred gear is. Azazel spoke after a pause. It is Neri Kiri, a dragon-based sacred gear that has the power to manipulate dragons using his voice, singing and manipulating the sea. This left some in shock, to which Sun Wukong asked. And how do you know about this? Azazel looked at him and spoke. I was checking Issei's room and I found this. Azazel brought out a small book, which was a diary belonging to Issei Haidu, as he spoke. I was checking Issei's room to find out what other secrets he had. I found this information because it was written down by him. On said sheet he stressed that she has the sleeping sickness that only affects demons. He made it clear that there could be a person with said cure. After that there is no more information, since he tore that part of the sheet. So you're telling me that he found a cure? Sayerg asked, to which he continued. Then he needs to be captured alive. Sayerg remembered his mother, who is still suffering from the sickness. Despite Dai working on helping her, she never woke up. At the moment, it is possible there is a cure. But the only one that knows this is missing. Azazel spoke with a frustrated tone, as Sayerg became annoyed and frustrated by this, but he was not the only one. Sona too seemed to have an annoyed and frustrated expression. He will retaliate against us, there is a possibility he may come back. Ria spoke with an annoyed expression, to which Azazel spoke. Not just him, he has more allies than we realize. Akeno only looked at him and responded coldly. And what makes you think that? Azazel grew a frustrated sigh and responded. That's easy, we've taken him for an incompetent, he's used that to his advantage to do whatever he wants right under our noses. Azazel spoke as he turned to the pages in the diary and read some of the terms out loud. I have managed to discover a secret that will break the hearts of many. I have taken several images and videos. What causes me great pity is how these women are hypocrites. They seem pure to the world, but the reality is different, they are actually whores. Azazel finishes reading as he could see several of the girls clenching their fists in anger. One of them was Yusaka, as she spoke with anger. So that means he was keeping information about one or more infidelity. Azazel shook his head and spoke. Not sure on that, he could possibly be lying, just like Dai states. We will only get more information once we locate and find him. Azazel's words were not taken well by the girls, some of them opened their eyes, not out of surprise, but rather fear. They increasingly felt like they were short of breath. He has been blackmailing the one who sleeps with them in exchange for various things, and he remains silent. Michael spoke with a deep thought as Azazel responded with total coldness. And the person is possible to be from the supernatural world. If we can capture him, we can deal with Issei Haidu and locate him before he tries something against us. These same women who were afraid slowly changed that emotion to anger, rage and frustration. What Azazel didn't know was that he had planted the seed of distrust in these women. Anything else you can find in this diary? Ajuka asked, to which Azazel spoke with annoyance. Nothing of any use, aside from that it is some grocery lists relating to his foods and some other information that is related to the previous entries. Most of them are burnt and destroyed. Azazel threw the diary at the center and spoke. Somehow I feel like he knew that we are going to locate his diary, so he destroyed the pages that had useful information. There was a page with 4 symbols belonging to Lucifer, Leviathan, Asmodeus and Beelzebub, out of which Lucifer and Leviathan were marked while the other 2 weren't done so. Some were left confused by this marking. What Issei Haidu meant, those present had several doubts that had no answer. Ria's Gremory felt completely defeated by Issei Haidu's ingenuity. Other women felt like the prey of that bastard, according to their own thoughts. All this conversation was heard by Valerie Teeps, who only listened to each word. If someone were to look at her more closely, they would notice at first glance that her eyes did not reflect any sign of life, as if she were dead in life. She sent all the details of what happened here to Issei. In a lifeless manner, her expression was completely broken. Sakvara spoke with a stoic tone. In itself, you have been very intelligent for all this, you managed to put us in a situation that we will not be able to solve alone. Her tone soon changed to frustration towards the end. Akeno then added with total coldness, voice dripping with venom. We're going around in circles so much, most likely he bled to death somewhere in the garbage dump. She talked about Issei like he was some sort of plague, she hated even talking about him. Valerie, who was hearing all of this, was informed by Issei. See Valerie, these are the people you once worked for. Beautiful, is it not? Do you really care for these morons? Issei cuts off the connection, as Valerie tried to respond but never could do so. We cannot let that boy go free, and we cannot let that girl remain an ally of his. Auden spoke with anger, slamming the table with anger, as Serziches spoke seriously. I understand, we will locate him at all costs, no matter what happens. Scene change. Issei's laboratory, Russia, 11:30 p.m. The girl can be seen with long silver hair and purple eyes. She is described as being very beautiful and doll-like. This girl in particular was watching Ingvald Leviathan sleep peacefully, in addition to noticing that his illness was slowly disappearing. This was because this silver-haired girl had in her possession a seed from those 365 plants and used it to prepare the girl's medicine. The girl was Ermid, the daughter of god Dian Sect, she then spoke. Their vital signs are improving, her eyes have been soon signs of improving. I need to inform this to Issei. Ermid was about to take her leave, but when the sliding doors suddenly opened, she was startled before asking. Issei? Issei removed his hoodie, as Ermid noticed his expression and spoke. You look different. How? It's a long story, speaking of which, how is she? Ermid soon cracked a smile and spoke. She is doing well, we may need more of the medicine that was recently developed. Issei nodded and spoke. That's good to hear, I will get the plants needed, thank you for your help Ermid. Ermid shook her head and spoke. Just doing my job eyes, I did owe Athena a favor, you should probably check up on her, she is worried sick. I will. You can count on it. Ermid nodded, as Issei was about to leave, she then asked. But what happened to you, you seem paler and your eyes have changed. What happened? Ermid asked Issei, to which he responded. I hope you don't mind listening to a long story. Ahmed nodded as Issei explained to her everything that had happened. He also assured that despite the virus's best efforts, it was unable to take over his mind. A sigh of relief could be heard from Ahmed as she spoke. I never thought you would end up taking the virus for yourself. It's a good thing you weren't replaced by it. Issei nodded as he spoke. Stay with Ingvild, report me or Clara any signs of her waking up. If this cure works, we can easily help Ingvild and anyone else that may get affected by this disease. Ahmed nodded in understanding as she watched Issei leave. She looked at Ingvild seeing that her eye has started to twitch. Scene change. Russian forests, 11:45 p.m. Issei was walking across the fields as he picked up some more mushrooms. His senses soon surprised him as he backflipped to avoid an attack. Upon closer inspection, there was lightning on the spear. However, instead of being surprised, he smirked as he spoke. Seems like they sent you, Barakiel. Issei turned his gaze to Barakiel, who had the appearance of a middle-aged, gruff-looking man with black hair, a matching beard, and a muscular body. Originally being a cadre-class fallen angel, Barakiel possesses 10 black wings. Hi do Issei, I have finally located you. Barakiel spoke as he continued with a serious tone, albeit there was a bit of arrogance. You will come with me, one way or another, there is no escape. Issei turned around to see several fallen angels. He could sense that there are no devils or other races around. He smirked in response and spoke. I am afraid not, and besides, I have some score to settle with you as well. Issei's hand started to transform into giant blades as Barakiel got on guard, ready for a fight. He would capture Issei at all costs since they have been locating him for days and he was not going to let this chance go free. Issei scanned his opponent and looked at Barakiel with a cold look. He knew that he didn't have to hold back as he wouldn't mind to test his new powers against this new guinea pig of his. Issei then spoke. So who is going to make the first move? Which dog of my brother needs to come after me and get the glory of capturing the great and evil plague known as Issei Haidu? The fallen angels were gripping their spears tightlier as Barakiel spoke with slight arrogance present in his voice. Boy, you don't have your boosted gear, this means that you are just an ordinary human, who Issei cuts the vice president of Grigori off by speaking mockingly. Who brutally burned your future son-in-law. Barakiel gritted his teeth in anger, remembering the scars and burns on the pillar's expression, as Issei continued while keeping his blade on his lips. Oh, speaking of which, how's Dai anyway? Is he alive or dead? Does he have his burns, since I knew that using Drake's flames would kill him, and nobody would want that now, would we? Issei spoke with a mocking tone. He didn't want to kill his brother, not yet at least. He wanted him to lose any and all hope of living, as he longs to see the despair in his brother's eyes. As for Barakiel, he was gripping his spear with anger in his eyes. He was gritting his teeth in fury, seeing that Issei was not affected by this at all, and was being arrogant. He vowed to teach him a lesson. After all, he was only asked to bring him in alive, not on how he was supposed to be presented to him. It would be better if he was beaten. Dead him. Barakiel commanded the fallen angels, who all generated a barrage of light spears and threw them towards him. Issei only took a deep breath and decided to sprint towards them, as he was dodging the light spears like it was nothing. No way. One of them commented as another one responded. How can a mere human without a sacred gear be this fast? Another responded to the two. Who cares? Fire another spear. The fallen angels charged their next barrage at Issei, who leaped in the air and grabbed the fallen angel by the head and with his hand shapeshifting into a sharp blade. Slash. Issei sliced off the head of the fallen angel, shocking everyone. He soon leaped in the air and changed his two hands or one hand and blade into two hands with giant nails and RRIPP. Aya. The fallen angels scream in pain as they were completely ripped to shreds by Issei. They soon fell to the ground as corpses, much to everyone's horror. Barakiel gritted his teeth in anger and shouted. Kill him. Issei grinned with sadistic satisfaction. He is going to make sure Barakiel's hope and dreams of capturing him are completely destroyed. After that, he wants to see the destroyed expression of Akeno Himejima. He can't wait to see that fallen horse suffer. The fallen angels all charged at him ready to kill him, but Issei had a nasty idea. He leaped on a female fallen angel and sat on her with his legs wrapping around her abdomen. Hey, what the hell are you doing? She exclaimed with a surprised tone and with slight embarrassment as Issei spoke with a mocking tone. Oh, nothing, you will just be my new guinea pig for an experimentation I just thought of. I wonder if I can control a fallen angel using the tip of my fingers. The fallen angel realized on what Issei was planning and tried to get him off, but Issei was quicker. He used his left hand to grab one of her breasts, which made her moan loudly. He used this distraction as an opportunity to change his right hand into small tendrils as he penetrated her skull and skin and inserted it into her brain, attaching it with his hands. This causes her to lose her blush and become pale. He made sure to not harm her brain in any manner as he removes his left hand, smirking darkly knowing that the fallen angel is under his control. What did you do to her? Barakiel shouted in horror. He was disgusted at Issei groping the girl, since he heard many bad rumors about him from his daughter. However, when he saw Issei changing his free hand into tendrils and attach it to her brain, he realized that his groping was only meant as a distraction. I made her into my personal ride. I just thought it would be funny if a human uses a fallen angel as my personal ride. Issei spoke with a carefree tone, making Barakiel grit his teeth in fury, seeing on how a mere human is able to control the fallen angel like a slave. However, before he could do something, the fallen angel under Issei's control unleashes a huge barrage of light spears. Seeing this, Barakiel shouts, "Jessica, try to fight back, he is only controlling you." The now identified Jessica could only cry in response as she was helpless in fighting back against the disgrace of the Haidu clan. Issei soon twists some of his hands and fires the light spears onto the army of the fallen angels that were taken down one by one when the spears hit their heads. Many fallen angels tries to avoid or flee the battle, but they were struck in their heads before they could react. Issei was grinning and laughing with happiness, seeing the despair and fear in the expression of the fallen angels. Jessica's pupils turned to Issei, seeing him enjoying and relishing the slaughter of her own comrades. She could only look towards Issei with anger and helplessness, along with sadness. Issei was controlling what she was doing and what attack she was going to use, and there was nothing she could do about it. Some of the fallen angels tried to strike her back in response, but Issei motioned his little and ring finger and controlled her movement. He moved her towards the north before he moved her to the left. He then controlled her to unleash many more light spears towards the attackers, who were horrified that Issei was able to gain full control of their comrade. Issei soon exclaimed with enjoyment, "I never knew that riding a fallen angel can be so fun. These crows have been a bane of my existence for years, starting with that slut Rainer. I am really enjoying when these crows are on the receiving end of the torment they inflict on humans." Jessica, who was the victim, could only cry in helplessness and anger. This was a blow to not only her pride, but also on the fallen angel race. Issei was relishing and enjoying her anguish. Issei was controlling her like a video game. He soon moved his thumb as Jessica flew to the left and lifted two of his fingers to fire another barrage of light spears at her allies, with some even striking onto Barakiel, who flew to avoid the attack. He wanted to use his holy lightning on Issei, but is afraid that Jessica might get hurt. However, seeing that there is no choice, he charges a strong holy lightning charge at Issei, which would get Issei, as he shouted, "Take this, you damned being." Issei looked at the attack and leaped in the air, dodging the attack. He soon generated a magic circle of flame magic, and before the fallen angels could react, he burned them all to a crisp with nothing but ash remaining from the aftermath. Barakiel looked at Issei in horror as he turned to see where the holy lightning had struck. And to his horror, it was Jessica, who was barely alive. She then spoke before closing her eyes due to the damage that was inflicted on her. Barakiel-sama. Jessica closed her eyes and died from the attack. Her body was bleeding and burnt to her crisp with some of her clothing being torn. She had a tear in her eye. Not only was she used to attack her own people, but also she took the immense attack of the holy lightning all by herself. She couldn't survive the combined attacks. No. Barakiel muttered with horror. Issei was able to wipe out his own army with his quick and strategic thinking, as he used one of his fallen angels as a shield and a weapon to wipe out the entire army. Speaking of Issei, he spoke while faking sadness. "Aw man, she was quite the good ride. She was quite soft to sit on, and her breasts were quite plump. No wonder many of her kind are good at tempting the opposite sex into giving into their desires." Barakiel slowly turned to Issei. He could be seen gritting his teeth with complete fury. He does not care if he brings Issei alive, he would want to bring him dead back to the factions. His corpse would be more than satisfactory for the factions, since they could care less whether he lives or dies. If they need something from him, they can check his memories for where the boosted gear is and where anything else he had hidden is. "I will make you pay for this, you damned bastard." Barakiel screamed while he released massive amounts of aura which started to shake the branches of the tree violently. The ground surrounding him cracked in response. He was ready to wipe out Issei once and for all. Issei only laughed in response to Barakiel's claims as he noticed the man raise his hands up, preparing to unleash a holy lightning storm towards him as he leaped from the ground and started to move around the trees, maneuvering around them to avoid getting struck. The trees Barakiel had struck with his lightning were burning. Issei knew getting hit would seriously injure him, but he had to survive against him. He already had a backup plan of retreating back to one of his labs using a specific spell if needed. Barakiel unleashed a slew of holy lightning towards Issei, who responded by converting his hands into a giant shield that deflected the attack to the nearby surroundings. Issei then spoke mockingly. "Really, is that all you got? Issei taunted in a mocking tone towards the cadre who was gritting his teeth in anger. He unleashed a huge barrage of light spears which took the shape of lightning bolt towards Issei, who only leaped to avoid the attack. His hands reverting to normal. Issei's hands generated extendable elongated barbed appendage with a spear-like blade at the end. He then looked at his creation and spoke. I will call this Whipfist. Using the spear end, he unleashed a brutal blow towards the cadre, who had to fly off in worry. He looked at where the whip-like appendage had struck, and the ground was completely cracked open, with the whip being pulled out courtesy of Issei. He was terrified on what would have happened had Issei struck him with the whip. He had to end this quickly. He knew charging at him was not an option, since he can just mind control him into serving him, just like he did to Jessica. Take this, you bastard. Barakiel unleashed a powerful storm of lightning energy, as Issei only moved to the side to avoid getting struck. Barakiel was losing his patience in front of everyone, as Issei kept avoiding the attacks like it was nothing. Barakiel followed it up by generating a barrage of lightning-based light spears towards Issei, and this time he encountered with a powerful surge of holy lightning, as he threw them on Issei. Issei avoided them, but the lightning started to move across the ground. Issei realized this, but before he could do anything, he was struck by the intense lightning. Aya! Issei shouted in pain. He did not predict the ground was coated with electricity-conducting metals. He gritted his teeth in pain. Barakiel smirked seeing this, as he walked towards Issei having a magic-suppressing handcuffs towards him. It's over, you bastard. I can assure you this, hi to Issei. You will never have a moment of peace once the factions recapture you. We will gain the boosted gear and the location where that Leviathan girl is. My daughter will enjoy torturing you for the harm you put Dai through. Issei could only look at him with an expression of anger. He could see Barakiel smirking at him. However, all of a sudden, Issei darkly smirked as he spoke. Are you sure about that? Barakiel looked surprised, as Issei started to move from being electrocuted, much to Barakiel's horror. But before he could do something like using more lightning against Issei. Issei gave a punch to the gut making Barakiel as he coughed up saliva. He was sent in the air as he was seen flying towards a tree. The punch was so powerful that Barakiel destroyed several trees in response. Issei's hands were different, which made his punch almost seem stronger. Issei opened his arms to break free from the lightning attack. He soon started to sprint towards the cadre, his hands gathering biomass which made his fists into huge giant biomass-based fists. Barakiel saw this and started to throw lightning-based spears once again, but Issei kept avoiding every strike with relative ease. He also decided to use the trees as a way to keep himself away from the lightning from the lighting spears, thus avoiding them successfully. Trapping the man with a tree at his back, Issei soon closed the gap between them. Barakiel's hand was coated in electricity to take down Issei, but the prototype was much quicker as he landed a blow on Barakiel's face, causing him to enter into a daze. This made his hands reduce their electric current. Issei continued the barrage of blows using Hammerfist, with Barakiel taking each and every blow, making him unable to block or do anything about it. Bam! The blow struck Barakiel's chin, making his head move to the sideways. Bam! Another blow struck Barakiel in the lower face which caused two of his teeth to break. Bam! Bam! Two blows struck his face, which caused his jaw to break wide open. Bam! Bam! Another blow was aimed at his dick and stomach making him yelp in pain. Issei unleashed an even stronger barrage causing Barakiel to cough up blood and saliva at every step. The cadre was unable to react or do anything about the attacks, only taking the entire blow while being completely helpless about it. More punches were thrown towards Barakiel as Issei delivers two kicks, one in the chest and one in the gut. He continues delivering more punches as blood flies out of Barakiel's face, his face all bloodied and bruised up. The blows were enough to send shockwaves that shook the tree branches violently to the point of snow falling on the ground. What's the matter, Barakiel? Unable to do anything. Unable to fight back. Where was all that bravado and arrogance when you and your batch of fallen angels wanted to hunt me down? You are just a fallen angel, a reject of God himself, and you are pathetic. You should have killed yourself the day when your wife died, at least your daughter would have been in a better shape, you pathetic piece of angel reject. Issei spoke with complete madness and enjoyment, as Barakiel could be seen gritting what remains of his face. The end result of Issei's barrages were him losing multiple teeth in his mouth, one of his eye gone from the blow. His armor partially torn and shattered. His whole face being bloodied and bruised, which only a mother can love. It's over. Barakiel tried to teleport away with whatever strength he had, but Issei kicked him in the dick, causing him to yelp in pain, which disabled the teleportation. So what will you do now? I have defeated you and your army single-handedly, and this was me without my boosted gear. Just imagine what would have been your fate been, had I used the boosted gear, cadre. Barakiel for the first time in his life, was terrified of someone he saw as a mere human. He could see his eyes, there was no emotion, no remorse or regret on what he is going to do. His eyes held complete lack of mercy, and his expression seemed deadly calm. Like he knew what he is going to do. Barakiel was terrified of this expression, he was downright afraid of this Issei, knowing he was going to die alone, failing the task he was given by Shemhazai miserably. It's funny, just imagine on what that fallen whore would be going through once you die. Alone in this forest. Barakiel lost his fear and became angry. Not only did he insult his daughter, but he also knew on what Akeno would be going through once his death was known. He shouted with all his fury. You scummy son of a bitch. You may have defeated me and even destroyed my army, but remember this Issei. The factions will not stop till you are destroyed, they will make sure your life is completely miserable. I promise you one thing, you will suffer for all eternity. Barakiel screamed with all his might as Issei only looked at him coldly, before shaking his head in disappointment, he then spoke. Do you really believe that, Barakiel? How cute. Issei walked around him as he continued. It's a shame that you won't live long enough to know what plans I have for your dear Akeno. After all, you will be quite useful for my research and goals. Barakiel gritted his teeth in anger upon hearing this and was about to use his light spear on him, but Issei generated a blade that chopped off both of his arms, making him scream in pain. Aya. Barakiel screamed in pain. He had lost both of his hands in just a few moments. Issei's expression soon changed into a more predatory one as he rushed towards Barakiel and spoke. I am really going to enjoy this. Issei opened his mouth in response as Barakiel looked in fear. He was terrified of what is going to happen to him. The last thing that was heard of the cadre was his terrifying and painful screams. The screams were heard across the entire forest as any animal that tried to approach the location. Scene change. Issei was standing on the remains of Barakiel, there was barely anything left aside from his clothing. He licked his lips in response, enjoying what he had done to the man. His hands soon started to crackle with electricity. This was Barakiel's holy lightning ability which Issei gained after consuming Barakiel. The reason Issei was able to consume Barakiel was because of the virus. The Blacklight virus's unique ability was that it can consume almost any living being into its system, allowing it to incorporate into his own being. However, Issei's body structure allowed him to gain another unique ability which he can use it on its own accord. He can absorb even magical abilities, which includes abilities and spells exclusive to a being's bloodline. By consuming a supernatural or human being, he can not only gain her physical abilities and memories but also her magical abilities and spells, allowing him to use them for his own gain. This extends to abilities like Holy Lightning or Power of Destruction for instance. Normally he would be pissed at someone calling him by his old name, but he didn't care anymore since he was going to relish seeing their expressions of horror and terror. That was more than enough for him, he enjoyed seeing their arrogance turn into fear and despair. Issei soon started to laugh maniacally in response, his eyes glowing red. He enjoyed consuming Barakiel, one of his tormentors was killed without any mercy, and just imagine the possibilities on what he can do with his holy lightning, now that it is added to his arsenal. Issei soon calmed down and spoke with a dark grin. Akeno, Azazel, I hope this news finds you well. He soon teleported back to his laboratory, where he encountered Ermid, who was worried since Issei took longer than what she had expected. She then spoke. You took a lot of time, what happened? Nothing much, had a run-in with one of the fallen cadres. Ermid became worried for this, as she asked. Did he? Issei shook his head and spoke. No, he wasn't able to escape, find out about this lab and Ingvold's location, nor was he able to survive. I tested the virus against him and it turns out. I can consume my enemies to gain not only their physical abilities, but also their magical abilities. Ermid felt a little fear. She remembered that Issei can consume her too if he wanted to do so. Issei sensing this approached her and kept his hand on her which made her flinch. Relax, I don't consume my allies and it is not a food source that I use to consume. You can be assured that you will be safe, that is my promise to you. You know I keep my word, right? Ermid looked at him and nodded. She remembered that Issei keeps his word no matter what happens. She then spoke deciding to change the topic. So did you bring the herbs and plants needed? Issei nodded as he snapped his fingers and brought out a magic circle. Soon herbs and plants fell on a nearby desk. Ermid looked at them and walked towards it, she analyzed the herbs and plants and spoke. That should be enough, you can leave the medicine preparation to me. Ermid looked at him and spoke with a smile. You can count on me. Issei nodded and spoke. I do Ermid, I know we will find a cure for this. Indeed, and this would be revolutionary. After all, the disease that was incurable will now be cured without a problem. Ermid spoke with a smile, she always wanted to find cures for diseases, given that she was the goddess of medicine. When Athena asked for her help, she immediately agreed, and even her father approved of it, since he never hated Issei. He was worried that his pantheon may end up hating Issei due to die, but regardless he is going to fulfill his role as a god and no one is going to stop him from doing so. Yeah, thanks Ermid, without you this wouldn't have been possible. Issei spoke, as Ermid nodded with a smile. She started to work on the cure, as Issei watched her do so. He knew that Ingvild will wake up soon and remember what happened to her. He was glad to get her away from die. Scene change. Time skip brought to you by Chibi Issei, sending Chibi Surziches and Chibi Grafia to Brazil. The next day. Grigori, 9:30 p.m. Shemhazai looked at the report in horror. Suddenly Barakiel's communication went off, but he sent a message that Issei had been located, however there was nothing he said after that, he suddenly lost communication. They decided to track his communicator, only to find a horrifying discovery. They found out that his armor was found along with mangled corpses of several fallen angels. However, what surprised them was aside from Barakiel, most of the fallen angels that had been killed in a weird manner. Most of them died by their own attacks, with one of them being struck by Barakiel's own lightning. How can this be? Shemhazai spoke with horror looking at the report as he muttered at what he was witnessing. He refused to believe that Issei was capable of killing Barakiel without the boosted gear. But the way they were killed, it felt like they killed each other without any mercy. Azazel is not going to like this. Shemhazai spoke with sadness as he had to give the news of Barakiel's death to Azazel and eventually the rest of the DXD team. He contacted Azazel and asked him to bring the orc to his office. A few moments later, the group showed up as Azazel and the orc arrived with them. Azazel then spoke. You called for us, Shemhazai. Shemhazai nodded and spoke. Yeah, I have some good news and bad news. The orc and Azazel looked in surprise at each other as Riaz spoke. What good news? I mean, if it is something that is related to all of us, it must be important, right? Shemhazai nodded and spoke. Yes, we have found Issei Haidu's last whereabouts. He was recently tracked down in Russia, in a nearby forest. Azazel and the orc were happy with this revelation, several of them were cheering for this, with Akeno speaking. Great, now we can make sure to torment that plague that hurt my Anata. Akeno exclaimed with a sadistic delight as Riaz spoke, stopping her. But first we need to extract information on where he has kept the boosted gear Akeno, and then we need to know of where he has kept that Leviathan descendant. Dai really liked that girl and was pretty sad when he was unable to get her to join him. Riaz spoke with slight wisdom as Akeno agreed to it. Akeno knew full well that Issei will not give up the location of Drag and Ingvild to them. She wanted to torture Issei for the information, but she knows that it won't work. So they have to find a different way, and the way that Ajuka and Azazel proposed was to extract his memories and find out where they are located. However, Issei had a gut feeling of them going about this plan and instead killed himself to prevent them from knowing about them. They had to locate him, and now, at the very least, they know that he is alive. But what about the bad news? The one who spoke was Ravel, as she spoke. You said there was good news, so what is the bad news, Shemhazai-sama? Shemhazai took a deep breath and spoke. The scouting team that had tracked down Issei in Russia were all murdered in cold blood. There were no survivors of the fallen angels that were sent to track down Issei. Azazel widened his eyes in horror and exclaimed. This has to be a damn joke. Shemhazai only looked at him and placed the report on the ground. This was the report he had received from the second search party that he had sent after they lost communication with the first one. Azazel widened his eyes and fell back in horror, looking at who was killed in the scouting party, as Akeno asked with worry. What is in that report? Before Azazel could answer, Shemhazai spoke. The report is on what happened to the first scouting party. Their deaths are what surprised me, it was like they had killed each other during their mission. It just didn't make any sense, but the autopsy report showed that their deaths were caused by light spear-based attacks. Azazel became wide-eyed, the report didn't deny what it was said. Shemhazai then looked at Akeno and spoke. Even the one that was leading the party was Barakiel, and the only thing that remains was that. Shemhazai called out one of the fallen angels who handed the armor to him. Akeno was horrified by this, as tears fell from her eyes, she then shouted. Please tell me this is a joke. Akeno refused to believe her father had passed away, Shemhazai could only shake his head, as Azazel spoke. No Akeno, this is not. Azazel showed the report, as he spoke with horror. The report clearly states that there was no trace of his body or anything left aside from the armor. Something tells me this was Issei's doing, but I highly doubt that he was the one responsible, given on how they died. Especially with the fact that many of them died by their own attacks. All in all, they died in a twisted Final Destination game, where they were made to kill each other. Akeno fell back, as she shouted in tears and disbelief. No, this cannot be. Akeno kept weeping, as her friends consoled her. It felt like a dragon had punched her gut. She was weeping endlessly, not only did she lost her mother, but now she has lost her father, in such a gruesome manner. Shemhazai, investigate this. Find out who was responsible for this. I don't think Issei had a hand in killing them, since I don't think he has any ability to mind control and use them against each other. Shemhazai nodded, even he refused to believe that this was Issei's doing. He had to investigate on who is really responsible for this. Since if this really was Issei's doing, then they are in for a far worse nightmare. Scene change. Valerie's house, Kuo Town, 11:30 p.m. Valerie was surprised by what she heard, along with Rind and Rise. The lovers of Issei were surprised by what they were hearing, or in Valerie's case, her girlfriend of Issei. Valerie then spoke. So that means, you can use Barakiel's ability Holy Lightning. Issei nodded and spoke. Yep, check this out. Issei showed Holy Lightning to them, which made both Rise and Valerie cringe, due to the holy presence in the lightning, as he disabled the attack. Issei then continued. I will be needing to train in my new abilities. This includes my new virus abilities and the Holy Lightning abilities. Issei spoke, as he continued. Not only do I have a lot to work on, but I need to work on some other tricks as well. The factions would have discovered Barakiel's state, and they will want to prepare against me or whoever is responsible for their deaths. I see. But will you come back? Valerie asked, to which Issei spoke. Yes, once I am done starting up my new organization that will be useful for fighting against the supernatural. Although I won't be back immediately. I did spend the whole day with you guys, didn't I? The girls nodded in understanding, remembering the time they spent together. At first they were slightly afraid of his consumption ability, but Issei assured them that he will never harm them in any manner. Only the factions are the ones that are to be afraid of this ability of his. It seems your plans are going to attract a lot of attention, you are going to get into trouble. Rind said, somewhat displeased. She was not a fan of the factions annoying and cornering Issei, which is the reason why he is going to create his own organization that would clash against the supernatural. Yeah, even if I manage to kill many. The factions will be persistent idiots, they won't stop until they find my corpse and burn it themselves. Issei spoke with annoyance, he already knew this from his experience with Barakiel, and others would also want to do something similar and familiar. Besides, I doubt they would stop looking for me, since I had harmed their beloved pillar. Issei spoke with total coldness and slight mockery of what happened to Dai. Rise, noticing the situation, asked Issei. So do you have a plan to get them off your backs? Issei nodded and spoke. Yes, I do. Issei spoke with a mocking tone right after that. It's time for Issei Mercer to remain in hiding, and it is time for Dr. Alexander J. Mercer to come into the spotlight. Issei snaps his fingers and speaks. My name is Dr. Alexander J. Mercer, a geneticist and a researcher, at your service. The three were surprised by this display that Issei had done so. Rise was amused seeing this, as she spoke with a mocking tone. So you decided to give life to a video game character, eh Issei? Issei nodded and spoke. Yep, I thought it would be nice to bring Alex Mercer to real life. Worry not, I don't plan to follow the path Mercer chose, since the dude was spiteful and cold-blooded individual, both paranoid and borderline sociopathic. I cannot blame the man, since he barely had anyone, but I have you guys, so I won't turn exactly like Alex Mercer. The three girls widened their eyes and soon smiled at this. They knew that Issei wouldn't fall too low, since they would be there to support and help him, both physically and mentally. However, a major problem is that none of the girls could be intimate with Issei, at least not yet. The reason for that is because the blacklight virus may end up spreading into their systems through his saliva or his body fluids, and he did not want to risk infecting them as well, since the blacklight virus would end up replacing them and create actual clones of the girls. Which will have the memories and personality of the girls, but they won't be the same people. Issei plans on finding a cure to prevent the spread from happening, finding a way to remove the replication feature of the blacklight and limit it only to a shape-shifting and evolution, maybe keep the consumption part, but that will be saved if needed again. Either way, it is good to hear that despite the virus's best efforts of replacing you, it failed to erase you completely. Rise spoke with a smile, earning a nod from Issei as he spoke. Yeah. Hope Azazel didn't bother you. A groan was heard from Rise, who spoke with annoyance. I don't appreciate it at all. Not only he is trying to go after me, but he also tried to corrupt my daughter and forcefully engaged her with that damn Dai. The best thing would be to give him a lesson to get it into his head that I don't want anything to do with him. Rise spoke with a sadistic tone, as Issei nodded in understanding as he spoke with a smile. Worry not, you will get a chance to watch the man suffer. I can even give you front row seat at his suffering. Issei spoke with a smile, as Rise responded with a more gentler smile, as she spoke. Thank you, Ice, I can expect you to do so. I can't wait for the day I watch them suffer. You must have really planned for them, haven't you? Issei only gave a smile to her, which gave her the answer that she needed. She was excited to know what Issei has planned for Azazel. She knew that Issei held anger towards him and knew that he did cause him a lot of pain. Speaking of which, what is the organization that you have planned of creating? Issei looked at Rise, who had asked him the question, as he spoke. I have a few hotshots in the higher echelons of the American military that is going to help me establish the organization. I already have plans for the funding that is going to be used for it. Rise nodded in understanding, knowing Issei developed a lot of connections in both the human and the supernatural world. Valerie then spoke with a sigh. I may have to go back to the supernatural though, since they have been looking for me, I will have to show that I am not working with you. Issei nodded in understanding, as she continued. Although I can't give guarantees on Dai, if he annoys me too much, he is as good as dead. Valerie spoke coldly as Issei understood again on what is going to happen if Dai does try to flirt with her and annoys her too much. I understand, but keep him alive, I want him to lose every will of living. Kill him now, would be mercy. Valerie understood on what Issei was trying to convey, his serious and spiteful tone showed that he really wanted to make Dai suffer. Since if there is anyone that hates Dai more than anyone else, it is Issei. I know, but it is going to be really hard. Plus Azazel even supports him, saying. He is a good person, and I am doing you a favor by pairing him up with you, Valerie, you will thank me later. Valerie imitated Azazel's tone, which earned some laughs from the group, especially from Issei and Rise. Issei then spoke while controlling his laughter. True, I did hear that after all. Although you needn't visit Rigori, all you do is return to Kuo, I would suggest you to go to Kuo Academy instead of the factions, since seeds of mistrust need to be spread, and I want you to keep an eye on certain people. Issei snapped his fingers and gave a list. The list contained the names of all those in Kuo Academy that Issei wanted to take vengeance against, and those that could pose a problem. Valerie looked at the list and had a smirk as she spoke. Consider it done, do you want me to eliminate these assholes? Not yet, when I ask you to. If you do eliminate them, my plans will be ruined, I have big plans for them and trust me, you are going to love every single moment of it. Valerie nodded in understanding, she soon remembered a recent news article that involved a huge influx of females being brought to Kuo Academy, as she spoke. I can wait for what you have thought, speaking of which, you plan on destroying these females on the list, right? Issei nodded and spoke. Yep, these girls either belong to the supernatural and have looked down on me, or they have been committing infidelity against the supernatural beings. Those that are marked in yellow marker ink are girls that still need to be investigated, as for the other girls, they are supernatural girls that look down upon me, and some of them are Dai's occasional flings. Many of them have partners or belong to the families that have no tolerance to infidelity. Valerie nodded in understanding, as she knew what Issei would have planned for them. Since she knew that Issei is not going to forgive those that torment him or look down upon him, he promised to make their lives as miserable as possible. Her eyes looked at the list as she spoke with a mocking tone. Heh, I didn't know that even they would do something like that for, how to put it, a trivial problem. Rise emphasized the problem with her hand, which Valerie could already see coming. You can see it in their face, Grand Aunt, they know full well that if their truth gets revealed it will cause a lot of problems. Hell, even the foundations of the supernatural will be shaken. Valerie mused in response, as Rise then spoke. Furthermore, the video proof have been deleted, only accessible by certain amount of people. Issei nodded in agreement, as he spoke with a laugh. I know that at some point I have to talk to them, it will be before cancelling Dai's wedding, since I have to make it unforgettable. Rise, Rind and Valerie could only imagine what is going to happen and are excited when the chaos of that day unfolds. Rise spoke with a maniacal grin. I can only imagine what is going to happen. They will be holding their marks in such pride, and when his truth is revealed they will be ashamed of keeping the marks. Issei could only laugh, this is going to hurt. The ones that are committing infidelity against their original partners will suffer the most. He remembers that there is Kusha and Tsubaki, he won't be surprised if there are many more girls. All this will lead to the domino blocks that will result in the complete collapse of the supernatural world. Rind spoke with a surprised tone, as Issei responded in agreement. Indeed, these false gods have used the mask of goodness and goodwill to commit some atrocities against humans and other innocent beings. This is not something I will let happen any longer, and those hotshots in the American military have agreed to my views and know on how damaging the supernatural is. They have lost people that they cared for thanks to them. Issei soon spoke with anger and spite in his voice, he really hated those that are worshipping these false gods, and plans to expose their real faces to the real world. It did not help that the virus amplified both his positive and negative emotions towards those that loved and tormented him respectively. Valerie approached him to calm him down, as Issei took a deep breath to do so. He thanked Valerie as he continued. Anyways, those that work with them will be dealt with accordingly, and I know how to deal with them. I plan to become not only the strongest being in this planet, but also I plan to get rid of these false gods. Even the biblical God is no different from Lucifer. He also used the mask of goodness and goodwill to commit many heinous actions. He didn't like anyone that opposed him and cursed those that did so. And I am glad he is dead. Upon mentioning the biblical god, both Rise and Valerie felt a headache but gritted their teeth to calm themselves down. Issei noticed this and spoke. Sorry, I forgot that you two are devils, or in Valerie's case, a half-devil. The two girls shook their heads and accepted his apology. Rise knew on what kind of a person the biblical god was, and she had informed him, which Issei did agree upon investigating further on God's background. But even if you and your allies go against the supernatural, you need to be careful of some aspects. Even if they are idiots, you don't want to underestimate Serzich's Lucifer or Ajuka Beelzebub. Then we have gods like Thor, Shiva, Indra and La who will cause complications in your plans. Rise spoke with slight warning against him. Even if she was a super devil, she had limits. She couldn't take on Ajuka and Serzich's at the same time. And then there were gods like Shiva and Indra, literal beings who could destroy entire armies like it was nothing. I am aware, in fact I know they are going to be problems. But worry not, as strong as they aren't invincible. There is a reason why Office and Great Red are the strongest beings, and my new body was made from their flesh and power. Issei spoke with a smile. He was not confident, and he knew his limits. But he knew on ways to deal with them. Rise had a feeling that Issei has plans for them, and it will end with the god's demise, or his demise. Either way, Issei plans on doing something big, and even if he loses, he is going to make sure the supernatural fall with him. Although what surprises me is that most of your plans are targeted against those that ruined your lives. Valerie spoke with amusement as Issei responded. Yep, and I plan to deal with them first, then those false gods will fall soon after. But that is dependable on unknown variables. After all, you never know what the future has in store for you. Issei spoke as he was about to leave to start the preparatory meeting with the organization he had created. Issei, wait. Issei turned around to see Ryan being the one who spoke as she asked. What is the name of the organization? Would you tell us that? Issei nodded and spoke with a smile. Well, the name of the organization is. Issei took a deep breath and spoke with a smile. Black Watch. That's it guys. Thanks for watching and supporting us. See you in the next part.